Okay, time for a little update here. So I'm getting ready to set up the tent in my garage. Again, it is a 10 by 20 backyard tent with walls that I bought on, where did I get it from? Amazon. I think it was 80 bucks. Pretty amazing, actually. A lot of plastic for 80 bucks. So I turned my car sideways in the garage. Sorry, wife, but you're not gonna be able to park in here for a little while. So this is where I'm at. And I'll kind of give you a quick run through of what I've done to get the body to this point so far. And once I get it kind of in place, tent up, I'm gonna do a final wipe down on it. Couple, go over it with a fine tooth comb and make sure that I didn't miss any little spots. But so where I'm at now, basically, I've block sanded the entire car. I started with 80 and then went to 120, and I even kind of, as you saw me, I even blocked areas that I didn't really do any work to, and I'm glad I did because there's some slight low spots in the body, the fiberglass body, and doing that helped me identify them. All in all, the body is really nice. I gotta hand it to Factory 5. The lines are straight. I don't know if maybe I just got a really good one. I know I occasionally hear complaints, but man, mine's great. And I filled in the seams, block sanded that down. So then I blocked from 80, then I went to 120, and then I did a DA sander at kind of a low speed at 220 with one of those foam attachments to the end of it, which gives the disc a little less bite and allows it to kind of roll over some of the contours a little bit better. So I DA'd the entire car down to 220, and even during that process I was still finding little areas, little pinholes that I needed to fill, and that's kind of what you see here, little spots like that. That was a recent discovery. A couple other little areas here. I don't know if I can remember where they are, but basically they keep popping up. So this is where I'm at now. I'm gonna do a wipe down and just make sure I got all of the spots scuffed. Basically, if there's anything left that's shiny on the original body, so anything that's red from Factory 5 that's still shiny, basically look at that as if paint will not stick to it. So I want to make sure that everywhere that it's going to be painted has this dull matte kind of finish, and then I'll bring that to a 220, and I think I'm there. I think I got it. Honestly, between you, me, and everybody watching this video, the parts I'm most nervous about in terms of the way it's going to look after it's got primer on it is the hood scoop. I spent a lot of time kind of flaring that in to match the hood, and I think I got it pretty good. But if there's going to be a problem, I'm telling you right now, that's where it's going to be. So you might see me kind of spending a little more time on that after there's some primer on it. So now, what you're getting ready to watch is me setting up this big circus tent in here. It feels like a circus tent. And that's gonna be my spray booth. I've got some filtration set up for it on both the input and the exit, including some heat management there. I've got heat control. I can actually heat this space, so that'll be kind of a nice treat. It's still cold here, still in the 30s and 40s. And that's too cold to paint, so in order to paint, I need to make sure I adjust that. So next step, setting up this big tent. here's my erected my erected booth, and as you can see, I kind of classed up the joint here. I put in a booth with some nice fancy windows, nice fancy plastic windows. They do help a little bit in letting some light in, but I'm not really relying on that. So as you can see, it fits in there pretty nicely. Again, this is a 10 by 20, and I'll show you what's going on the inside. Actually, before I do that, here's my fan blowing into this. So as you all know, I don't have a heated garage, and it's still in the 40s here. I need to get that space up on the inside to somewhere in the 70s, and it needs to be predictable. So I need to have some sort of thermostat control. That's actually going to be the challenge, because I'm finding that space heats up really quickly, too quickly. So I gotta figure out. Not quite sure how I'm doing that yet, but I'm gonna try to open up my zipper here with one hand. May or may not work. Okay. Now I'm on the inside here. This is what the inside of that box looks like. I've got a filter there, so pulling in filtered air. I don't want to introduce any more dust in here than I have to. So this is the booth, and I put in some temporary lights, hung those up there. They do a great job of lighting the space, I think in part because the walls are white. And then here I've got my portable light, a vertical light source, and this will be handy for me to kind of drag around in here while I'm spraying, and it'll allow me to kind of look into the reflection as I'm laying down finish. That's always really handy when it comes to knowing how much you're applying and where you're applying it. So on this side, air's coming in behind me, air has to go out some way, and I needed it to be in a very controlled fashion. So on this side, the air exits through an exhaust, and that goes directly outside. And to kind of help, I have a small box fan in there that I'll probably put on low, and that'll just help keep a really good amount of air going through here. It'll also allow the air to go through this booth in a predictable fashion, and that's handy when you're spraying. You want to make sure the overspray goes in one direction, doesn't just kind of cloud the area and kind of swirl and create these random scenarios where your overspray is dropping on freshly coated paint or freshly applied paint. So I know that when I'm painting, I'll be able to, I know that I'll start from this side and then work my way there towards the exhaust. And I sprayed a little talcum powder in here to just check the airflow, and it moves to that side pretty rapidly. So I think I'm in good shape here. We'll see. The booth, this part seemed easy to me. The painting part, I don't know about that yet. We'll see. We'll see how that happens. We'll see how that goes. Yeah, so one of the tricky parts of painting, as I'm realizing here, is not just the car, the big parts, but all the little parts. They're tough. They take a lot of orchestration. Basically, you gotta be able to paint these in a fashion that they can dry, obviously, for one. But you've got to keep in mind that I need to store all these someplace while I'm painting them and moving on to some of the other parts. So I'll be painting this in a bunch of different layers, I think. I'll do first round will be a bunch of the small stuff, and then I'll move on to the larger parts. Speaking of the larger parts, I'll show you what my rack looks like here in my spray booth here. So I put together a wooden rack that allows me to hang each of the parts individually. Doors, trunk, hood, and other door. And this rack, I'll step back so you can see it a little bit better here. This rack is on wheels. So I'll be able to roll the whole thing further into the space, paint the back side of all of these you know, I mean, obviously I'm talking about primer as well as finish coat and top coat, but primer, color, and top coat. But so I'll you know, do the back of these, then roll the whole thing back, and then do the front sides, and then I'll be able to move on to the car. But all those little parts, those are the parts that are tricky. Because I need to paint them in here, and I don't really have a lot of space to keep them in here, so I'm gonna come up with some sort of rolling rack, I think, that'll allow me to spray each one individually, put it on a rack, and let it cure into the right temperature, which will be inside this booth, and then wheel it out through the door there. So that's the struggles I'm facing with right now. I'll probably move on to building some smaller racks now. Well, here are all my little parts getting ready to march into the spray booth. I made these metal racks to hang them. I've got a little table set up in the booth. So I'm gonna do all the small parts first. I'm getting ready to do all the cleaning on these, but I wanted to stage them first and kind of do a practice run, because I'm gonna try to do all the small parts in kind of a linear fashion. You know, start with a primer, and then go to various coats of priming and just kind of do it in order. So this is this is complicated. I don't know how else to put it. I don't want to paint myself into a corner here, so I'm actually practicing my paint approach. We'll see how this goes. But next is I got to clean all these parts individually. They're all sanded and ready, but the final wipe down has to happen. So that's what I'm on to now. I just finished masking up most of the car. I'll show you what I've done and why I've done it. First off, I will say one thing. Being in this makeshift spray booth with these bright white walls and pretty bright lighting in here has shown off some defects that I'm kind of glad I found. I think I'm glad I found. The harder I look, the more little parts you find that need some work. And you know, maybe I prefer the old ignorance is bliss days of my shop lighting without the spray booth. I think I'm joking, obviously, but as you walk around, you keep finding these little details that you attend to, and I know at some point it's just got to be good enough. I'm not making a show car here. I'm making something I'm going to drive the hell out of, so I'm not really all that concerned. I'm not showing it, and I'm not really going to be super anal about some of the details. But hey, in any event, so this is what I've done with masking. So back in my furniture finishing days, one of the things I remember, I learned through some fairly painful lessons, that whatever you're masking, make sure that material that you're masking it with allows the finish to stick to it.
So plastic is not actually great to mask with. I remember masking a tabletop once, and I used some plastic to cover up some areas, and the paint flaked off it while I was spraying, and it completely ruined the finish. So, and I know that a lot of people already know this, but I thought I'd share that with you. So I'm using paper, and yeah, it's a royal pain. Plastic would have been a lot easier, but I'm using paper to mask these areas. And you saw me mask that front wheel. Kind of did that all the way around. Here I'll do a quick walk around. Trunk was no fun with paper, but it's nice and sealed. I did that technique called back taping, where you tape the back side of the flange. Here, tape. Okay, so let me talk about tape real quick. Before I get all the interesting comments about why am I using duct tape and not masking tape, right? Masking's right in the name. The only place I'm using duct tape are areas where I'm not all that concerned if I'm going to get a little tape residue left over. So that's on the underside of the flange. So when you're back taping, you're basically back taping, you know, up underneath the flange here. Nobody will ever see that. So if the tape doesn't come away completely cleanly, I don't care. What's more important to me is that it doesn't release while I'm spraying. And I just had some masking tape. I started using masking tape here. It wasn't sticking very well on the truck bed liner that is sprayed on the underneath side of this whole thing. And it kept coming off, and it was coming off a few minutes after I put it up, even after I cleaned the surface. So I can't risk that. So I'd rather risk a little tape residue in areas I can't see than to worry about the masking tape failing. The other nice thing about gray duct tape is that it's a little more flexible, and it's a lot more forgiving, and it's a lot stickier. So it sticks really well to the paper. So I did have to use plastic here. There's no way to do paper. What I think I'm going to do is actually, I might end up taping some paper sections over the larger areas here to try to reduce the risk of paint and stuff flaking off of this and blowing into the paint. But that remains to be seen. I'll have to put a little thought into that. It's really critical in these big flat areas where the surface is right adjacent to the surface you're trying to finish. That's where you really got to be concerned with it. And that's obviously why I did it here as well. Same kind of scenario here. So yeah, that's where I am on this. Oh, one last final thing. I think I am going to do a plastic skirt around the bottom of the car, just to reduce airflow flowing under it and kicking up dust while I'm spraying off the floor. I just got to figure out how to do that, but I think that's what I'm going to do. So that's where I'm at now. I'm starting to angle towards actually spraying some primer here shortly, so stay tuned. here we are after 3 coats, and I'm very happy. In fact, more than happy, I'm surprised. It actually came out really good. I really can't imagine it could have sprayed on any nicer. It dried really tight. You know, no, I didn't have any runs or sags or drips or nothing. I'm using the Harbor Freight Purple Gun. I've had one for years, and you know, it does a good enough job for me. That's for sure. But you know, this is the area I was concerned about, really, the hood scoop. I didn't know how well that was going to kind of die into the rest of the hood, and it looks great. No complaints there. So the product that I'm using to paint with, I'm using Nason straight through, so it's from primer all the way to top coat. I'll flash an image of what I'm using here. Now let's take a look at the main attraction here. Again, it sprayed on beautifully. You know, this is a tricky car to spray because there's no flat surfaces, and I you know, I've got to work on my technique. You know, you saw me first start spraying the nose here, and I kind of didn't really know what I was going to do or how I was going to approach it. But you know, the primer's forgiving. I'm nervous about when it comes down to the base coat and clear coat. That's the part that'll really challenge me. But hey, it's good. I'm definitely on pinhole patrol now, because there are a few. Let me see if I can find one here. Now there's one right there. I don't know if that's going to show up or not, but yeah, I'm going to probably spend a good half a day going around touching up little parts here and there. But hey, I'm happy, and this is a big milestone for me. My spray booth worked perfectly, and it created a nice draft, you know, from this side over to here. And I got, you know, virtually no overspray or very minimal overspray, and everything was kind of predictable and worked as I had hoped. So next step, lots of sanding, pinhole filling and sanding.
I'm going to end the video here, but I wanted to end on by adding a couple of notes. First off, this part of the build felt very different to me. It's not a part of the build where you can say, well, tonight I'm going to go out and install the steering wheel or put in the pedal box, something along those lines. With painting, you know, it's a soup to nuts kind of operation, and there's a lot of steps that have to align to make everything work, and the mistakes are costly, both in time and money. So it was, to say it was daunting to me is to put it mildly. But what helped me was to list all of the steps out in order, and you know, I committed it to paper, and I just followed those steps. And once I said, okay, I'm going to block these, you know, 3 or 4 days aside just to get this primer down and do whatever it takes to make that happen, and I follow my steps. Once I looked at it that way, it was like any of the other parts of the build, and just a little stinkier. But I don't know if this information is helpful to anybody, but I just wanted to kind of end with a few of these thoughts. So I think next you'll see a little bit of block sanding of the primer here, and then hopefully some color going on next week. Stay tuned. Thanks for watching.